Hey everyone, it's Your Name, and let's talk about something we all spend way too much time thinking about: social media. It's become as much a part of our lives as like indoor plumbing, but instead of making us feel clean and refreshed, it often leaves us feeling kind of gross. We've all heard people say that 99% of social media is toxic, and while that might be an exaggeration, it's not entirely off base. The truth is, social media can be seriously bad for our mental health, our relationships, and just our overall well-being. So, in this video, let's dive deep into the dark side of likes, shares, and endless scrolling. We're going to unpack the reasons why social media feels so toxic and why, despite knowing it's probably not great for us, we just can't seem to log off. Okay, first up, let's talk about how these platforms are designed. And no, I don't mean the color schemes or the cute little notification sounds, although those are engineered to be appealing too. I'm talking about the underlying algorithms, the code that decides what you see and when you see it. These algorithms are designed to do one thing: keep you scrolling. The longer you're engaged, the more ads you see, and the more money they make. And you know what keeps people glued to their screens? Strong, emotional reactions. Think about it. What posts are you most likely to stop and engage with? A picture of your aunt's casserole? Probably not. But a headline that makes you angry, a political rant that gets your blood boiling, a picture-perfect influencer that makes you question your entire existence. Yeah, those are the ones that hook you. Social media companies know this. They've figured out that negativity sells. So they prioritize content that triggers those primal emotions, even if it's harmful or misleading. It's like they're feeding us a constant diet of digital junk food, knowing it's bad for us, but pushing it anyway because, hey, it turns a profit. And here's the really insidious part. The more you engage with this kind of content, the more the algorithm shows you. It creates these echo chambers where you're constantly bombarded with the same opinions, the same outrage, the same negativity. It's like being trapped in a hall of mirrors, except instead of reflecting your image, it's reflecting your worst fears and anxieties. Now, let's talk about how this constant barrage of negativity affects our brains. See, our brains are wired to seek out pleasure and avoid pain. And social media, with its carefully crafted notifications and instant gratification, has figured out how to exploit that wiring. Every time you get a like, a comment, a share, your brain releases a little hit of dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter. It's the same chemical reaction that's involved in things like eating and, well, other pleasurable activities. The problem is these little dopamine hits are highly addictive. Like a gambler chasing a win, we keep coming back for more, hoping for that next hit of validation, that next notification buzz. And then there's FOMO, the fear of missing out. Social media creates this constant sense of urgency, this feeling that if you're not online, you're missing out on something amazing. It's like everyone's at the party except you. And you're stuck at home refreshing your feed, just in case something changes. This fear of missing out keeps us glued to our screens, endlessly scrolling, even when we know we should be doing something else, like, I don't know, living our actual lives. We become slaves to the algorithm, sacrificing our time, our energy, and even our sleep in pursuit of what exactly? Okay, so we've talked about how social media is designed to be addictive, but what about the actual impact on our mental health? Well, it's not pretty. Numerous studies have shown a strong correlation between heavy social media use and increased rates of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and body image issues. And it's not hard to see why. When you're constantly bombarded with images of other people's highlight reels, it's easy to start feeling inadequate. You compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's carefully curated online personas, and surprise, surprise, you don't measure up. This constant comparison game can be incredibly damaging to our self-esteem. It fuels those negative voices in our heads, the ones that tell us we're not good enough, pretty enough, successful enough. And then there's the cyberbullying. Social media has given bullies a whole new platform to operate on, one where they can hide behind anonymous profiles and hurl insults with impunity. The effects of cyberbullying can be devastating, leading to depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. And it's not just the negativity from others that's harmful. The pressure to present a perfect online persona, to curate an image of happiness and success, can be incredibly stressful. It forces us to live our lives for the gram rather than for ourselves. Chapter 4, the digital playground of cruelty, cyberbullying, hate speech, and the spread of misinformation. We've talked about the individual impact of social media on our mental health, but let's zoom out a bit and talk about the broader societal implications, because here's the thing, social media hasn't just made it easier to connect with people, it's also made it easier to be cruel. Cyberbullying, which we touched on earlier, is rampant on social media. It's become a breeding ground for hate speech, harassment, and online abuse, and the anonymity that social media provides often emboldens people to say and do things they would never dream of doing in person. It's like the internet has become this giant high school cafeteria where cliques rule, rumors spread like wildfire, and anyone who's different is fair game for ridicule. But it's not just about mean comments and online drama. Social media has also become a breeding ground for misinformation and propaganda. False information spreads like wildfire on these platforms, often with dangerous consequences. Think about it, how many times have you seen a headline on social media that turned out to be completely false? Or a story that was taken out of context to fit a particular narrative? It's become harder than ever to discern fact from fiction, and that's a real problem. It's called social media, but ironically one of its biggest downsides is how it can actually make us feel more isolated and alone. We're more connected than ever before, yet rates of loneliness and depression are skyrocketing. So what's going on? Well, for one thing, social media often displaces real-life social interaction. We spend so much time scrolling through our feeds, liking and commenting on other people's lives, that we neglect our own relationships. We trade in face-to-face conversations for emojis and DMs, intimate dinners for Instagram stories, and while there's nothing wrong with staying connected online, it shouldn't come at the expense of real-life relationships. There's also the issue of comparison, which we talked about earlier. When you are constantly bombarded with images of other people's seemingly perfect lives, it's easy to feel like you're not measuring up. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy, envy, and loneliness. And then there's the pressure to present a perfect online persona. We carefully curate our feeds, only posting the most flattering photos and the most interesting anecdotes. This creates a distorted view of reality, both for ourselves and for others. We start to believe that everyone else's lives are perfect, while ours are somehow lacking. Let's not forget the business side of social media. These platforms are free to use, but they're not charities. They're businesses, and their business model is based on one thing: you. Every time you use social media, you're generating data. Data about your interests, your habits, your likes and dislikes. And this data is incredibly valuable to advertisers who use it to target you with personalized ads. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how an ad for something you were just talking about magically appears on your feed? That's not a coincidence, that's data tracking in action. And it's not just about targeted advertising. Social media platforms also use your data to manipulate your behavior. They know what kind of content keeps you engaged, and they use that information to keep you scrolling, clicking, and watching. It's like they're conducting a giant social experiment, and we're the unwitting subjects. They're constantly tweaking the algorithm, trying to find new and innovative ways to keep us hooked. Finally, let's talk about the impact of social media on our brains, specifically our attention spans. We live in a world of instant gratification, where information is available at our fingertips 24/7. And while this can be incredibly convenient, it also has its downsides. Social media, with its constant stream of notifications, updates, and breaking news, has trained our brains to crave novelty. We've become accustomed to consuming information in bite-sized chunks, scrolling from one headline to the next without really absorbing anything. This constant stimulation can make it difficult to focus on tasks that require sustained attention, like reading a book, having a meaningful conversation, or even just sitting still with our own thoughts. We've become so accustomed to being constantly entertained that silence and stillness can feel unbearable. And it's not just our attention spans that are suffering. Our ability to think critically, to analyze information and form our own opinions is also being eroded. We're so bombarded with information from all sides that it's difficult to know what to believe anymore. So that was a lot of negativity, and I don't want to leave you feeling completely despondent. Because here's the thing, social media isn't all bad. It can be a powerful tool for connecting with people, sharing information and building communities. The key is to use it mindfully. Set boundaries. Limit your screen time. Be selective about who you follow and what content you engage with. Don't be afraid to unfollow, mute or block accounts that trigger negative emotions. And remember, social media is just a tool. It's up to us to decide how we use it. We can choose to let it control us, to dictate our moods and our self-worth. Or we can choose to use it in a way that enriches our lives, connects us with others and makes us feel good.